Hello everyone, today I'm bringing you the latest 2026 version of our CKA question bank. The main changes are actually in some of the parameters within specific questions. There are some adjustments, but the main topics remain unchanged. The core themes of the Step 2 CKA exam are still centered around these 16 areas. From now on, we will bring you a new question every day. Today we start with the first question, which is about the HPA axis and the issue of automatic negative feedback. For this question, the concept of automatic negative feedback is actually, well, relatively speaking, when it comes to controlling the number of our pods, it allows us to achieve an automated effect. The main content of this question is to have us create a new HPA resource ourselves. Secondly, to carry out certain configurations. Next, let's take a closer look at the requirements of this question. First of all, this question mainly concerns our... First of all the questions are actually the same. The very first step is always to do what? That's right, go to the relevant topic and remotely connect to our corresponding host. The second step is to create. Of course, when creating, we have two requirements. There are two requirements. First, the initial requirement is to set the CPU usage. For this, you just need to specify the exact percentage according to the details given in the question. Next, it's about the number of specified codes. As you all know, with auto-scaling, there is both scaling out and scaling in. So here we always have limits for the maximum and minimum values. Here, the maximum and minimum values are usually specified directly in the question.
Let's pause for a short announcement. Friends, if you're currently preparing for this ITification exam, or if you've been studying for a while but don't feel your preparation is very efficient, this is something you shouldn't miss. Our team has been focused on its certification dumps for 16 years, doing one thing consistently, organizing the most up-to-date, most exam-accurate, and easiest to use dumps to help candidates pass their exams more efficiently. Our dumps closely follow official exam updates. They are stable, highly accurate, and well aligned with real exam questions, allowing you to prepare with more confidence while spending less time. If you'd like to get the dumps for this exam and pass the certification faster, you can contact us directly via WhatsApp or YouTube private messages. We're happy to explain the latest update dates, dump stability, exam policies in different countries, as well as any current purchase discounts. Everything is clear and transparent before you decide. We also place great importance on payment security and privacy protection. The entire purchasing process is simple and secure, with no unnecessary data collection. Your personal information and privacy are fully protected. In addition, we provide 24/7 consultation and after-sales support. Whether you're just getting started or running into issues right before the exam, our support team will patiently and professionally help you analyze and solve problems. You're never preparing alone. Beyond this specific exam, our dumps cover almost all major IT certification tracks. If you plan to pursue other IT certifications in the future, feel free to reach out anytime. We'll give recommendations based on your goals.
The minimum value is usually 1, right? The maximum value is generally 4, but these can change. They might vary. So you really need to pay attention here and don't just assume. When taking the exam, don't just write down all the quantity parameters from our question bank because these values can change. These are all things that might vary. Things like names or numbers. These are all actually variable parameters, all variable parameters. So after specifying the maximum and minimum values for the CPU percentage, the next and final part, which is the fifth part, is that we need to set a cooldown window. So for example, when the CPU usage reaches a certain percentage, after it hits that percentage, how long do we wait before scaling down? Because when it comes to scaling up, what do we usually do? As soon as we hit that critical threshold, say 50%, we immediately scale up. There's really no delay when scaling up, right? But for scaling down, there is. You need to make sure that the overall environment is stable before you proceed with scaling down, right? You can't just say, for example, as soon as I drop below 50%, I immediately scale down. But maybe the next second it goes back up, right? It goes above 50% again, and then you'd have to scale up again, wouldn't you? So when it comes to scaling down, what do we actually need? A window period and a stable window period. That is, only after it has remained stable for a certain number of seconds do we proceed to scale down. In our question here, what's given is, in this case, the window period given in the question is 30 seconds. This could also be a variable parameter. This involves some numbers and some specific names and such, which could all potentially change. So first of all, these are basically all the requirements for the question. And actually, it's not particularly complicated. So first, the first step is to create our HPA. And while creating it, we'll also specify the CPU usage and the number of replicas at the same time. So there's no need to split this into 2 or 3 steps. We can just complete it with a single command. Here, everyone should pay attention to this point. Actually, there are mainly 2 ways to write this now. The old way was to write something like CPU% equals 50, which means 50%. The new way is simply CPU equals 50%. You can just write it like this directly. In a moment, I'll show everyone. These are actually just 2 different ways of writing it, the new and the old versions. Of course, both are acceptable here because the new version is compatible with the old one, so everyone should definitely pay attention to this point. This is an update between the 2 different versions, which means that actually as for the environment, the exam environment has been updated to a new version, but overall, the questions themselves haven't changed much. However, there are some new ways to solve the problems. Because with the new version update, there are some changes in the commands. So, especially with our first question, you can already see it here. The solution to our first question actually involves creating when it comes to HPA, there are actually 2 different configuration methods. Both are correct, both are valid. Next, let's take a closer look at how to approach this question specifically. First, after we open our lab environment here, we can remotely access it and start working right away. Of course, it's the same during the actual exam. For each question, we remotely connect to our specific host. For example, for the first question here, it is host number 50. So let us connect remotely. After establishing the remote connection, let us take a look at our specific configuration method. First of all, when creating resources, I recommend that everyone first write out our namespace directly. This is a convenient way to enable automatic completion. Because in this way, what can you actually do? You can use the auto completion command directly. And after you write out the namespace first, what's the benefit? It means that all the content under this namespace can be quickly auto-completed, quickly filled in. In this way, it's relatively faster when you type it yourself. And also, what's another advantage? It's less likely to make mistakes. Yeah, it's less likely to go wrong. When it comes to names, everyone needs to pay special attention here. Like, since we're creating this name ourselves, it actually can't be auto-completed here. So at this point, you must make sure to double check the name, because even if you get the name wrong, it doesn't really matter, since it's something you created yourself. So whether the name is right or wrong, it's up to you. However, in the question, we actually specify what this resource should be called. So in this case, you have to check it yourself. If you get it wrong, there won't really be any error messages. This is mainly... And as for the maximum and minimum values, our minimum is 1 and the maximum is 4. Alright, up to this point, we've basically completed our specification. Our command setup is done. This is our overall resource, which actually mainly consists of 2 parts, the CPU section and then the maximum and minimum values. As for how to write the CPU part, besides using the dash, like CPU% equals 50G, what else can you do? Another way to write it is, you can also just write, for example, dash CPU directly. Just put CPU followed by an equal sign. Then write 50% directly. This works too. These are 2 different ways to write it, and both are correct. Both formats are valid. This one is the new version, and this one is the old version. Either one can be used in exams. Both are acceptable. Now let's go ahead and create it as usual. Once it's created, we have the resource, right? So now actually, we've already met the first 2 conditions, only the last one remains. That's the issue of our window period. So what do we need to do about the window period? We need to edit this resource and add something inside. Actually, there are a lot of things to add here. If you were to write it yourself using an external file, it would actually be quite complicated. So the most convenient and simplest way for us here is to do what? That's right, to use our edit command. Just press Ctrl+N in Google. As always, what do we write first? First, we specify the namespace, then the edit command. Edit what? Edit our HPA. You see, everything can be auto-completed here. It's all auto-completion for us. So, relatively speaking, you can type faster and you're definitely not going to make mistakes. Is it really impossible to make mistakes? Once you get in, what do we look for? We look for our maximum value. The maximum value is right here, right? There's a space under our maximum value, so we can add new content below it. Just add 3 lines of content. Actually, it's pretty simple here. Adding 3 lines is quite straightforward. This is a recommended way to do it. If you don't add these 3 lines here and you really go to modify the file, it won't just be 3 lines. It could be close to 10 lines of content. So this is basically a more streamlined way of writing. It just specifies what we need here. There is no such thing as a window for shrinking or scaling down, and actually there isn't really a concept of a window here, because when we scale up, it's basically done immediately, since we need to ensure the stable operation of our environment. So scaling up is usually done right away. It's immediate. But when it comes to scaling down, we generally need to wait until our environment is stable before proceeding. So we wait until the environment is stable before scaling down. For example, if the requirement here is 30 seconds, we just enter 30 here. The default unit is seconds. After making the change, we save it here. Right? As long as it saves successfully, it means there are no issues with your syntax. Your syntax is correct. So how do we check the final result? Actually, it's still the same. We do it through this. First, write the namespace, then use the get command to check. The same applies later on. If you want to verify whether some resource configurations are correct, you can just use the get command to check. Here, we can see that now it is an Alpha 7 server name, right? And then including what's after that. CPU usage is at 50% with a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 4. And then, as for the 30 seconds, it's not displayed here. If you want to check it, what else can you do? You can also go to the edit command. Right? You can see that even though we only wrote 3 lines, it automatically generated so much here. This is basically automatically generated. There are 7 of them generated automatically. This makes things a bit easier for us. If you really had to do it all yourself, it would actually be quite troublesome to write, right? Writing so much is also hard to remember. Normally, just writing 3 lines is enough. Here, writing these 30 seconds is no problem. So that's our first question. So you must make sure to check carefully, really check carefully. Because if you write the parameters or the names incorrectly, there won't be any error messages. For example, look at this 1 to 4 here, the 50%, and also the 30 entries we just edited. If you write it wrong, it won't give you an error. Everyone should note that when we get an error running a command, it's usually because of what? Maybe there's a problem with your syntax, or your options are incorrect, or there's an issue with the parameters. If the parameters are different from what's required in the question, it won't give you an error. So everyone must be careful about this. Now, for this question, we don't have any issues, right? After checking and confirming that both viewing commands are okay, at the end, we just need to exit. We need to exit from number 50, and for the next question, we'll connect to a new remote terminal. All right, so that's it for this part. That's the first question of CKA. In the future, we'll also regularly bring you explanations of other new questions. If you need the complete question bank, you can leave a comment below and get the most stable question bank at the best price. That's all for today, everyone. Bye-bye.